More power, more watts, more better. Sorry, what? Many people often make the mistake in believing that the only factor to take into account when purchasing an amplifier is power, and that you spend more to get more power. Well, let me tell you, that certainly isn't the case. So I've talked a lot about turntables and a little bit about speakers in a number of my other videos, so I've finally got around to making the AudioLlama's rough guide to purchasing an amplifier. While a lot of this might seem a little bit turntable and vinyl specific, most of it should apply to any kind of amplifier purchase. Right then, why do you need an amplifier? Well, all speakers need some form of amplification, be it your portable Bluetooth speaker, your Sonos streaming system, or even the teeny tiny speaker in your smartphone, which has a teeny tiny amplifier to go with it, then all the way to your big hi-fi speakers and their separate amplifiers, and that's what we're going to talk about here. At the most basic level, an amplifier is a device that applies gain to a weak current, in our case to make it strong enough to drive a set of speakers. But it's not quite that simple. The amplifiers we find in most consumer electronics are what we call integrated amplifiers, like in my own Yamaha AS501. And these integrated amplifiers combine the power amplification stage, that's the bit that does the heavy lifting and provides all the juice to your speakers, and the pre-amplifier stage. Preamp, you say? That's right, kind of like the preamp that you have for your turntable, but without all the crazy EQing going on. Preamplifiers can do a number of jobs in an integrated system, such as channel selection, so you can pick which of the line level signals to actually send to the power amplifier stage. They can also provide a small degree of gain to that line level signal so that it's loud enough for the power amplifier stage in your amp to actually deal with and drive your speakers with. And lastly, it's where all equalization, balancing and volume control is done, so you can decide if you want to have no sound or have your face blown through the back wall of your house into your neighbour's garden, out to the pub, neck 12 pints of Guinness and find yourself passed out somewhere in a ditch. I'd recommend sticking to integrated amplifiers to begin with. Separate power and preamplifiers that you can get are more the domain of the super high end. They get pretty blooming expensive quite quickly, and they're definitely beyond the scope of this video. So firstly, you need to consider what you actually want from your amplifier. What inputs, for instance, do you need? Do you need one for a tape deck? Do you need one for a mini disc player, for a CD player? Do you want a DAC or digital to analog converter in there so you can plug your TV, your video game console straight in? And I guess most importantly, do you need a phono stage for your turntable? If you don't have either of those things, a phono stage or a DAC, you might need to invest in an external one later. Most amplifiers these days come with more inputs than you can shake a big old stick at, but smaller amplifiers like the Project Stereo Box S only have the bare minimum, so obviously that is something you need to take into account when looking at those kind of devices. They also often only have one array of speaker terminals, so if you're thinking about putting multiple pairs of speakers in, you won't be able to do it very easily with these amplifiers. Next, you want to think about power, wattage. The more is better in that it means you'll be able to have, indeed, greater volume. It also means you'll have more headroom, which means you're less likely to have any distortion in your amplifier. But you should really consider how much power you actually need. The 85 watts per channel that I get from my own Yamaha AS500 amplifier is awesome, but it's way more than I've ever needed. And say something like the 50 watts per channel that you get with the Marantz PM6005 is more than good enough for most people. And if it comes down to one of them sounding better and the other one having more power, I would say go for the one that sounds better. You're going to get more enjoyment out of it in the long run. How much power you actually need is determined by a few factors. One of them, obviously, how loud you actually listen to it, the size of the room, and the sensitivity of your speakers, which is rated in decibels on the spec sheet of the speakers. Higher decibels is generally more sensitive. One last thing to consider about power ratings as well. They're notoriously easy for manufacturers to manipulate and not quite make them up, but make them do what they want. So just be aware if you see an amplifier that can pump out a bazillion watts of power for the same price of another amplifier that can only do, say, 50 watts, take into consideration that those bazillion watts might not be very good power and might end up with high levels of distortion and not very much clarity. Most manufacturers will also provide a variety of specs, such as frequency response, damping factor, total harmonic distortion or THD. I wouldn't get too wrapped up in these, although if you do see an amplifier with, say, a particularly poor THD rating, anything higher than 0.1% will have quite a high noise floor potentially and should really be demoed quite intently, if not completely outright avoided. Now, there is one last technical element that I haven't yet talked about, and that is money. How much you're willing to spend and the comparative worth of the rest of your system is going to factor really heavily into your choice of amplifiers. After all, there's not much point if you're only planning on spending £200 on a set of speakers in going off and spending £2,000 on a top of the range, all bells and whistles, insane amplifier. There are differing opinions of how much of your budget should be spent on each individual item in your system. Personally, I err to spending a little bit more on your speakers than your amplifier, but especially in the low end, this gets a little bit muddier. While budget amplifiers these days in the kind of £200 range are getting better and better every year, the degree to which amplifiers in the, say, £300 range outperform them is really surprisingly dramatic. So even if you're spending relatively frugally and getting a pair of £200 speakers, say the Q Acoustic Q3020s, £200, the degree to which they're improved by a £300 versus £200 amplifier is pretty blooming big. That's right, pretty blooming is the new technical term. The only way to really know if an amplifier is going to sound good with your speakers, with your turntable, and I guess with your ears, is to actually listen to it and find out if it works for you. You can read and watch reviews all you like, and they will help. They'll certainly help you work out which amplifiers have the right features for you, and maybe give you a rough idea of the sound qualities of different amplifiers, and help you narrow down and maybe make a short list of which amplifiers to demo. I suppose we don't all have the ability to go out and demo things, so in those situations you do have to take a little bit of a risk and rely as much as you can on reviews. But I guess that's part of the fun. Alright, I hope you've dug, that's right, dug, my first video, my first proper video at least, for 2017. Hope it's been useful for you. If it has, then do give me a like and subscribe to see more of this kind of thing. Click on the llama at the end to do that. Please follow me as well on social media if you like that kind of thing. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. All the links again down below. Tell me in the comments what amplifiers you've got, or if you've got any plans to buy an amplifier anytime soon and what you're going to go for. That would be kind of awesome. If you want to watch a video of my predictions for 2017 for turntables and vinyl, click up there to watch another interesting llama video down here, and click on the other llama's face to subscribe. Bye bye.